What's up, everybody? Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Jason Schnitzer, and this is the Husband Coach Show. Here's your next episode. What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in. Got a great show for you today. And we're going to talk about being a nice guy. And really, as a lot of people refer to it as, is nice guy syndrome. And what I like to do is define things just so that we have kind of a common understanding of, what the heck we're even talking about. So I've got a little definition written down here I'd like to share. And that is, the nice guy syndrome is really a behavioral pattern where a guy prioritizes pleasing others and avoiding conflict to an extreme extent. And then that often comes at the cost of their own needs and desires. And typically, a nice guy will go out of his way to be agreeable, accommodating, and non-confrontational, hoping to be liked or to avoid any form of disagreement. However, this behavior can lead to internal frustration, resentment, and lack of genuine, fulfilling relationships because their action is really driven by fear of disapproval rather than being your authentic self. So if this is you, try your best to release yourself from the shame of that feeling because you're talking to a recovering nice guy. And, nice guy syndrome and people pleasing are definitely cousins, if not brothers. And what's important to understand is that nice guys don't finish last, okay? Being nice isn't inherently a weak thing. And what I want you to tune into and really take a look in the mirror on is understand that it's why you are doing the things that you're doing that matter. So a nice guy, quote unquote, I'm using quotes here, air quotes, is being nice because they believe that being agreeable and accommodating and non-confrontational will get them approval, right? It'll get them approval, it'll have them fit in, all the things. So they're not necessarily being nice because they genuinely desire to be nice, right? So it's like you're giving with strings attached is another way of putting it. And those strings that you attach to that is, again, like the approval, the acceptance, the validation from usually the person that you're looking for that for is your wife, right? Or women in general. And that is a form of codependency. It's like, and there's almost like an unspoken agreement that a lot of men take on without really having awareness to it is like, hey, if I'm nice to you, if I do everything that you ask for, you will meet my needs, right? And that is putting the onus and the responsibility for our own happiness on other people. And that is a tall order, which really nobody can meet. It's just not possible. And what happens is we start to feel that frustration, that resentment, maybe even that lack of genuine connection or authenticity, because a lot of times we have to forego who we are, what we believe in, our needs and our desires, and put other people's needs and desires ahead of ours in order to get that acceptance that we think will give us what we need. So if you can start to see it from this lens, then all of a sudden you can make sense of why you're doing the things that you're doing. And again, this isn't to shame you or make you feel bad about your experience. All of this behavior is very much learned, whether that be from, your own family dynamics, like from a cultural, societal lens, there's a lot of like schools of thought that will say, you put other people in front of you because that's the right thing to do. You sacrifice for other people, which in a way is true. But again, it's like all about the intent underneath why you're doing what you're doing, right? And a lot of that boils down to, self-worth, feeling good enough, and just inherently for who you are, right? And when you're able to feel good about you and feel good about like who you are, what you bring to the table just as being you, then it starts to release you from the idea that you need to do things for other people in order to get them to like you or to approve of you or validate, who you are. So now that we kind of have like a little bit of awareness of what this, response is in a way, how can you start going about making real change in your life? Okay. So step one is always acknowledging that you have the issue, right? It's like sometimes the hardest part, of course, is saying, hey, I'm struggling with the nice guy response. Like I see how this is showing up in my life, whether that's like you have the symptoms or the feelings of frustration, resentment. Maybe you feel like a chameleon, you don't know who you are, you don't have as much fulfilling relationships as you'd hope to have, like you don't feel authentic. Like those are really good indicators that maybe this is going on for you. Or you have things like, what you're feeling with your wife is like you don't feel appreciated maybe. You don't feel like she like sees and acknowledges like the things that you are doing. You never feel like you're enough for her, and you can never feel like you're doing anything right. A lot of times those are really good symptom indicators that you're in this nice guy syndrome or nice guy response, as I like to say. So once we have acknowledgement and realization, then you can start getting into like, where in my life, this is like a question you can start asking yourself, where in my life am I saying yes when I really want to say no? When I agree to something, is there a part of me that really doesn't want to do this thing, right? And we can start picking out the areas in our life where this is presenting itself. And the next time those things start to come up, you can start choosing to potentially make a different decision. Now, that's not always an easy place to start. However pragmatic that might seem, to just like, oh yeah, I can just start getting right into action. Really what we want to start doing is diving a layer deeper. I kind of touched on this already, to like understanding why we're doing the things that we are, which is for that approval, for that validation, and start genuinely giving that to ourselves. And how do we do that? Because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, love yourself, and like, oh, like give yourself what you need. And it's like, if you've never done that, it's like, well, where the hell do I even start? Where I started was, where was I not doing what I wanted to do deep down? My desires, and a lot of that starts with hobbies, right? What pursuit or what creative thing or what hobby or what activity is it that you really want to start incorporating into your life that you're just not doing because you don't have time, because maybe you're giving that time to other people? And then start prioritizing you. Because self-love isn't like you sitting in a room. I mean, part of it is like, right, sitting in a room and doing, affirmations and gratitude and stuff. That is a very important part of like developing, we'll call it self-love. But like what's I believe is even more important is actually taking action on changing things in your life by prioritizing and scheduling things for you that you want to do. And when you can start doing this and then start recognizing, man, just did this thing, that felt pretty fucking good, I want more of that. And then you start realizing like you just have to start choosing you over choosing other people. And again, this can be uncomfortable because for a lot of us, we've been programmed that choosing ourselves just isn't possible. And that's like, that goes back for, it could be from when you're a kid, right? You really want something, your parents say, hey, you can't have that, right? Or we can't afford it, or we don't have time for that. And so you kind of get this programmed into you like, oh yeah, I can't because, I can't afford it, or I can't have this because other people are more important than me, whether that be your siblings, your parents. Really, it could be anything. I'll leave that up to you to kind of search within your own life to figure out what that story and belief is for you. But when we really start tapping into what our beliefs are, where those beliefs came from, we can now decide, since we're, all adults here and we have agency and the ability to choose what we want and we don't want, we can start becoming responsible for ourselves, not accepting our past programming, our past beliefs, and the way that we did things before, and start to make active change in our life and move forward in a way that more aligns with who we want to be. Because for most of us, if we're doing what's familiar, we're operating from a place of who we are now. And, that can be fine in some ways, but also for most of us, it's like we're always looking to grow, right? Or that should be the trajectory that we're looking to head in. And in order to do that, you have to make decisions that are not familiar, which can be uncomfortable. And the more you're able to make uncomfortable decisions and step into the unknown, the more that you're able to embody who it is that you want to be, next year or 5 years from now. And that's done by making little uncomfortable decisions every day that more align with the person that you want to be, even though it feels maybe in some cases pretty freaking terrifying to do so. And you'll realize that the road to recovering from, the nice guy response or nice guy syndrome is little daily small steps to actionably choose you and prioritize your needs to the point where you start to gain a new baseline for like what feels good, what you need. Because again, a lot of like the recovery from the nice guy syndrome is a discovery process. Like my favorite line is fuck around and find out. It's like there's a lot of fucking around and finding out when it comes to figuring out what you need, especially when you've gone 20, 30, 40, 50 years, people pleasing or being a nice guy. That can be a daunting thing. Is like, wow, you're telling me that I could like choose what I want? It's like, where do you even start? Sometimes that in and of itself can be confusing and overwhelming. So just know that this is just like a journey and a path that you're just walking from now on. You're just testing, you're choosing something, you're trying something, and it's like, oh, did this work or did this not work? So many times I feel like, at least in my experience, like everybody's kind of looking for that magic bullet and something that is like, oh yeah, this thing, when I add this thing, it's really going to make my life whatever you think it might be. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. But how it does work is every day is like an experiment, right? I always talk about like figuring out what the recipe is for you, and different chapters of your life, different seasons are going to have different recipes for the ingredients that you need to include in your day-to-day life to, make that result of that day optimal, right? Something that you enjoy, right? Or in this case, like a meal that you want to continue to eat. And a lot of times, like the things that we're putting in our recipe and our ingredients and our actions need to be things for now and things to plan for the future. And that way of thinking, that way of living will naturally take you out of your nice guy response and your nice guy syndrome. That's not to say that you won't have the experiences and the feelings of feeling like you need to please somebody in your life, because that will be there. But what's also worth noting is like, as you change, a lot of people in your life will respect that, right? Because we're adults, and it's like, well, yeah, of course I wouldn't want him to do something that he didn't want to do. I wouldn't want him to do that to me, right? There's going to be a lot of people that feel that way about that. But you are going to have people that are going to be like, wait a second, you're not doing this for me anymore. And you saying yes when you mean no isn't going to, and now you're saying no when you really mean no, that's not going to serve some people. And so, again, I'm not trying to get too far ahead of you here, but once you get to the point where you start feeling good about choosing yourself and really incorporating these things in your daily life and your daily actions, then you're going to have to start understanding how to set healthy boundaries, which I believe I have a podcast on already. So you can go back and listen to that. I'll probably do another one too. And just understanding that, like, building your capacity for your own self-love and your receptive capacity to feel good about you. And that starts with making choices and doing things that you truly want to do. And the more you can build that, the more you can receive that from other people. And what's going to be interesting is once you're able to start embodying this, what you're going to notice in your marriage and your intimate life, it's like you're going to be able to say no and be able to say, hey, I actually don't feel good about this. And then your spouse is most likely going to respect that. And what's cool is like, once you start stepping into this and you start feeling better about you, you start showing up in your marriage different. And this is like what's key and most important, is like you take the responsibility from your wife, from your friends, on making you feel good, and you are now in charge of that, right? And once you start understanding the ingredients of what you need to feel good, and you give yourself that for a long enough period of time, all of a sudden that frustration and resentment and that blame can go away that's on your wife, specifically in this case, or your girlfriend or fiance or long-term partner. And then all of a sudden, the dynamics in the relationship can change. And it's really cool because, like, the other part of that is like, when you rely on somebody else for that, and in this case, that nice guy symptoms start showing up, a lot of times, like, a woman can feel like she's mothering you because, like, she feels responsible for you. And guess what? Whenever a woman feels like she's your mom, like, there's just like a part that instantly loses that sexual attraction or that intimacy. It's like, it's just, I like to think of it as like kind of like that ick factor. Like, girls are just like, ugh. And the truth is like, feminine women want men in their masculine. And in order to be in your masculine, it's like, you have to be grounded in knowing what you need. You have to be grounded in the direction that you're going and your purpose. And when you put those things first and you can have a clear vision of that and you know what path you're on, then all of a sudden everything else is just like whatever. Saying no to it isn't a big deal. And that in and of itself is probably the most attractive thing that you can, how you can show up in your marriage. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this podcast. I've been getting a lot of stuff on nice guy. It's a common thing. And it's absolutely something that is you can overcome 100%. I've done it. And probably the number one thing that I can attribute is support in that, and having a coach help me through that, which is part of why I'm so passionate about me doing what I'm doing, because it just completely changes your life. I do have openings, so if you're interested in learning more about coaching with me, you can go check out my Instagram at Jason Schnitzer Coaching, or my website, which will be all in the show notes, jasonschnitzercoaching.com, just in case you don't know how to spell any of that. Hope you guys enjoyed, and catch you on the next one.